I feel like when Brett Yormark wants to say the Big 12 is going shopping, the Big 12 is going to make a move, the Big 12 wants to add teams, I feel like historically, Dre, correct me if I'm wrong, he's just kind of come out and said that. And when he was asked about realignment, he said, quote, I hadn't really thought about how big is too big for a conference. I often get asked about expansion and what's next. I'm really focused on the current composition of our conference. We've expanded a lot. My wife told me the other day, when you took the job, you had 10 schools. You have 16 now. That's in a very short period of time, less than 24 months. And quote, that was over on 247sports.com reporting. I feel like that's a pretty tame comment by Brett Yormark standards in the realignment space.
Yeah, I don't think Brett Yormark was going to give you anything substantial during his comments in Las Vegas this week, and I didn't expect him to. I was on a radio show, 960 ESPN in Salt Lake City the day before, and the question was posed, what will Brett Yormark say? And I didn't expect too much, and we didn't get anything crazy when he got on stage and did the big spiel where he's the head coach of the conference and says, we're a top 3 league in America, and everybody, yeah, or, it was like, Brett kind of got up there and said what he needed to say, and he didn't ruffle really any feathers or do anything too outlandish. But I'll remind you, last summer when the Big 12 was in early talks with Colorado, or right on the top of it, Big 12 Media Days was around that time, and nobody could have told you substantial evidence at that point that Colorado would join the conference, then Utah, Arizona State would follow as well. So I don't know we can exactly derive the Big 12's next move. Their latest moves, we've gotten all the ins and outs. What is their next move? Brett Yormark didn't give it away, but he did say when he got questioned, when they do at media days where the guy gets the podium and he walks the stage and, I'm the commissioner. And then he does the thing where he gets off the stage and reporters hold cameras in their faces. And that's usually the point where the interrogation gets a little bit more fun. The guy feels a little bit more like, ooh, I can say something cool because I'm in this little niche of reporters. And what Yormark said there was, I want to be the number one conference. I will not stop till we're the number one conference in the country. And if that means that you're going to sell the naming rights to the league or put yourself in the best position when it comes to paying student athletes and revenue sharing, that's all great and good. But if you don't expand, these 16 teams cannot be the number one conference in the country. Maybe I'm reading too far between the lines, but these 16 cannot be number one over the SEC. You're going to have to add something else that's flashy, and Yormark has to know that.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit of coach speak from the commissioner, because we all know the Big 12 is solidly behind the Big 10 and SEC. There are no moves 100%. That can be made, even if the ACC were to disband, which I've said at length I do not anticipate. I think there's a completely viable path forward for the ACC to continue to exist.
I've said the same thing, Spencer. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I bet. So I did, see a comment he made about, we've positioned ourselves solidly as the number 3 conference in America. From a stability standpoint, that is true. But if you're on the ACC side of things, without FSU and Clemson, the leagues at the very least are comparable. The Big 12 might have a slight edge, but overall, when I look at the Big 12 and the ACC, I say they are on, at the very least, similar footing. They're in the same tier. Like if you were to divide the Big 10 into 3 tiers of teams, and at the top of tier 2, you were to put USC, and at the bottom of tier 2, you were to put, UCLA, for instance, you'd put them in the same tier. You just wouldn't have them right next to each other. Yep. That's kind of how I view the Big 12 and the ACC. Not necessarily with that size of a gap, but looking at where these leagues stand football-wise going forward, assuming FSU and Clemson are going to get out of the league, which I think you and I both anticipate happening, then at the very least, I look at those 2 conferences and say, there's no reason they can't both exist, because one is basically as good as the other, and that doesn't even allow for the possibility of programs elevating themselves to strengthen the conference.
Yeah, Yormark is in a position right now where, you're right, coach speak standpoint, he is here at Big 12 Media Days to do what? Beef up the Big 12. One of the statements that I thought was so interesting from him was saying that he felt as though the league, and this is per Brett McMurphy, had underperformed last year, but now says there's a lot of parity, a lot of star power, a very deep conference. Does he think the league is deep enough to make it number 1? Does he actually believe that, or is it truly coach speak? And Spencer, to go into to what I think we've almost missed the boat. The expansion part is so important, but maybe what Yormark's really harping on, what he did over the course of the early in the week and media days, was talk about selling the name of the conference and still looking for the corporate sponsor that's going to take over. And can we get patches on the officials that are All-State or something? How can we make more money to close that gap? If we know that even by adding in a dream, impossible, insane scenario, Florida State and Clemson, you still aren't the SEC, you still aren't the Big Ten. What can you do from a more micro revenue standpoint to shorten that? I think maybe it's putting patches on your officials. Maybe it's making it the All-State 12. That's $10 million extra dollars per school per year. Great, bring it on. That's
the All-State 12. I mean, I get it. I get it. Also, Florida State and Clemson are suing to leave the ACC to go to the Big 12. They're going Big 10 or SEC.
Unless you're listening to Greg Swam, who is a reputable reporter, has a lot of Twitter followers.
Oh gosh, I don't even know if I want to dive into that. So we shall not. But
right,
I think the naming rights thing is kind of a necessary step, almost to stay afloat, even if I don't like it. At the end of the day, does it have a material impact? Yes, in a positive way. Like the perception of, it's going to be the All-State 12. Oh, man, that would feel so weird and wrong. Yeah, but if your alternative is that, or not being able to be as relevant financially as you possibly can be, because frankly, you could be staring at a deficit compared to ACC schools. If they get a fat settlement from Florida State and Clemson to leave the league, that could be a couple $100 million each. Well, I don't think they're using that to add more schools to the conference, at least not in the short term. I think they're going to use that to fund their athletic departments. So you have to look at revenue if you're the Big 12 and say, anywhere we can get it, you go for it.
You do, and that's why people are going to scoff at the All-State 12. And sure, to me, it is. We're going to call it the Big 12. We still call. Was it you? I think you and I may have had this conversation. It's still Twitter. I still call
it's still Twitter.
We still call it Twitter.
I jokingly refer to it as X, formerly known as Twitter, but in my daily life, it's Twitter.
I tweeted. I went to twitter.com. We're still going to use that. And Brett Yormark is going to say the All-State 12 in official statements. And that's what it'll look like when the emails come through from all the media people on that side. And guess what? I don't care. You don't care. And if it's that money that keeps the conference afloat in a world where a lot of people believe the SEC and the Big Ten have enough power to steer college football in the direction where they want it, and that's not shocking. They control a whole lot of this thing.
Most of it
has to play catch up
yeah.
somehow and do it. Sell the conference name. Nobody's going to care. If it means extra money for the schools, just do whatever. Put the patches on the event. Make it like sponsor the halftime shows. I don't give a rip. If it makes me still host Locked On Big 12 in 2 years, good. I don't want to have to host Locked On College Football 2. What are we going to do, Spencer, when the Big 12 goes under? There's only one Locked On College Football.
Locked On All-State 12?
Yes.
I guess.
I can do that.
I feel like I'm obliged to let you go right now because we're recording and it's kind of late where you are and your face looks like a damn cherry tomato at the moment.
My ring light went out. My ring light went out and I am using a very dark yellowish tinted light, and now I'm fired up about Brett Yormark saying nothing. Now I'm fired up about nothing.
What else? You know what? I get fired up about Seinfeld, and that's a show about nothing. So I think that's as perfect a way as any to end the segment.
It's well written. It's damn
Thank you. I try. I thought you were talking about my line, not the show itself, but I'll accept a compliment that you didn't extend. Anyway, Drake Toll, Locked On Big 12. Drake, thanks as always.
Spencer, I love you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.